For the last generation,
On
you have a choice.
BakerMotor.com, the Republican
I
candidate
did
for
not
governor.
have sexual relations with
I
that
realized
woman.
that this is something he isn't
We're not going to be
hearing.
able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers.
One Republican, one Democrat, and you discuss the issues that matter in today's local, state, national, and global politics. Hosted by Steve Hickson with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is Backfire.
Good morning, and great disappointment. Steve's not here.
Oh, who's not? Who's disappointed?
I am.
His wife's probably disappointed.
That's right. Steve is probably trying to work his way into volunteer radio retirement. Look who's here, though. He is not retired. John, what's your middle name, John? John Samuel Stanberry, ladies and gentlemen, is now sitting right beside Franklin. Two of the finest.
I was actually here on time, and I thought I'd just scan the paper in my car, and apparently it takes a lot longer to scan the paper than you realize.
I would guess so.
I am sorry. I was actually sat in the parking lot and made myself late.
So that's all the prep work that you do is you come in here, you sit in the parking lot, and then you quick try to read to figure out what's going on in the news.
You know what's really weird, and I'm sure the Banner and the Times Free Press won't like this. I've really gotten to where I rarely read the paper anymore. I get everything online. You know, I get all these stories. For example, Amazon sends out every morning most read on the Washington Post.
Huh.
So I don't read the paper as much as I used to.
Well, that's a problem, John. Do you subscribe?
It's a problem for the papers probably, which I'm sure they've seen over the years. Digital format is probably eating away, which is why they've all moved into a digital format themselves.
Yes, and readily available. So much of it you can choke on it. Well, gents, let's start with some local goodies this morning. We've got the commission approving the school's budget of $75 million, which is an increase, if I read this properly, in the expenditures of about $2.1 million. Those increases fund 2% raises for salaried folks in the school system, step raises, which I guess is annual bumps. I don't know.
The step raises are mandated based upon experience.
Okay.
So how do they mix with the 2%?
Well, those are supposed to be cost of living kind of raises.
So everybody got 2%, but then some people got a step.
Some people, when you cross certain barriers by the pre-negotiated agreements and so forth, get there's specific salaries tied to dates of service.
Yep.
With the system.
Yeah, and that's one of, I taught for a year, and one of the benefits was knowing you're going to get paid a little more every year no matter what.
Sure. You've heard me say in here before that it does not really bother me what starting teachers make. It bothers me what finishing teachers make.
Yeah.
It relatively speaking, it's not a very high salary for what we ask them to do.
Of course, as good as all of our teachers are, if the teachers union would allow us to pay merit-based increases, I think everybody in Cleveland, Bradley County would get a raise. But the union won't allow that.
Maybe one day. And it also contains more than $1 million worth of capital projects.
Because we haven't spent enough on bricks and mortar in Bradley County and Cleveland City.
Yeah, I found that interesting also. It says one obstacle faced by the system this year was a reduction in the BEP funding, $438,000 less than what had been anticipated.
Franklin, weren't you involved? I mean, do you understand that more, how it goes down?
I don't really remember what the funding mechanism is for that. I suspect that the answer is there's been some litigation around the state about whether the BEP funding unfairly provided money to urban areas as opposed to more rural areas. And I believe the outcome of that required some reallocation of those monies to give a little more money to the rural school systems to equalize things a little bit more, and that's probably the explanation for that.
Would that indicate that maybe the Bradley County school system might get a bump up?
Well, I don't know if we qualify as a rural school system anymore.
Well, I guess my point is, obviously, Cleveland City doesn't.
Well, I think it's treated as as an area.
Rather
this is
than-
the Bradley County area, so I think that probably includes all of the county.
Okay.
Very good. Well, it says they got a balanced budget, and
Well, I just hope,
2-1.
my big concern, and you know, I get kind of whipped up about what I consider huge things, is when we hear this kind of funding and all in the city council and working with the schools, I just hope to goodness we're going to have enough left to have an indoor tennis complex, because, you know, people are starving for indoor tennis in Cleveland City. And so I hope this tax increase will be able to fund indoor tennis courts.
councilmen out there, I don't think there's any councilwomen right now. Are there?
Well, fortunately, they're on top of this. Indoor tennis courts are one of the top priorities, and that's why we need this big tax increase. So when you're struggling out there to earn your money and to pay your taxes, just know that it's going to high priority projects like indoor tennis.
So did that end up high on the?
We're going to have an indoor tennis complex in Cleveland. So they're talking about a tax increase because we need more money, and one of the things that we're apparently going to spend it on is an indoor tennis complex.
Where's that going to be?
Well, I've heard that it's at Tinsley, and then someone else is now saying they're going to have tennis courts downtown. And folks, if you missed it, I'm being completely sarcastic about this. This is the kind of thing that frustrates the crap out of me. You know, we talk about kids needing better support in education, and teachers do need more support. I talk to teachers all the time that don't have an assistant in the classroom, but we've spent millions and millions on big fancy buildings with fancy architects. And now we're talking about a huge tax increase in the city, and one of the things apparently on the slate is to have indoor tennis courts.
And those are public courts, or is that going to be attached to a certain
I don't know.
Cleveland High School?
To be perfectly honest, I don't care. I bet if you did a search for indoor tennis courts in the state of Tennessee, we will be one of the leaders with indoor tennis courts.
Well, that'll be something else that we can be proud of.
Now, we don't have a homeless shelter that people can actually stay in as a family. You know, we have a big open room over there where if you actually have a family that's homeless, the kids all have to sleep out in the room with all the other people. Mm-hmm. You know, we don't have individual rooms that we can put them in, but by golly, we're going to have indoor tennis.
Well said.
I don't think John's for the indoor tennis. At first, I was thinking, man, John really likes tennis.
This is another perfect example of not understanding the difference between a want and a need. And we have needs, and the problem with our government on all levels is they spend money on wants, and people love wants. And so it's hard to, after the fact, go, well, I wish we hadn't done that, because people go, well, I love that. You know, I got to go play tennis when it was raining. It was great. The problem is then they turn around and say, just like the city council's doing, we don't have enough money for our needs. We need some more firemen. We need some more policemen. Well, if you need more firemen and more policemen, maybe you ought to X off the indoor tennis courts first before you ask the taxpayer for more money.
How has the Greenway been funded, largely? Has that been a government expense?
It's been a mixture.
Okay.
There have been a lot of private contributions for it. There's a Greenway board that has raised money for
They
it.
have.
But the local government bodies have provided
And
some
the
capital
feds.
and some labor.
And there's been federal grants. But here's the problem with that. Same type of problem comes into play there. It's concrete. You can drive a Mack truck on the Greenway. Mm-hmm. For the cost of the concrete. Now, at this point, with oil prices, a few years ago when they were up, asphalt was actually, at one point, I think, more expensive than concrete. Mm-hmm. But when we started with this, asphalt was a lot cheaper.
Well, the argument for that is there are substantial portions of the Greenway that flood, and it's designed in order to survive without eroding out.
Because our roads
big chunks
erode
of
out
them
regularly in asphalt.
Well, we don't get running.
Franklin, fine.
Most of those.
You want to?
I'm just telling you what the argument is.
I've heard that argument, and that if I will tell you, I finally pinned a city employee down in charge of this, and he finally said, "This was in the Rotary Club. We just like concrete. Well, ask any homeowner out there. They'll say, yeah, I like concrete too, but I didn't concrete my driveway because it cost too much. I chose asphalt because it was a more cost-effective means. And my point here with this is twofold. For the amount of money they spent on the concrete, we could have greenwayed all the way to the Ocoee River. Mm-hmm. And secondly, it's actually not as good for you. Mm-hmm. Jogging on asphalt, or God forbid, jogging on a compressed pug, some kind of, gravel, is actually better for people. Yeah. Which was the whole point of the Greenway in the first place. And I'm sure I'm going to get fussed at for I'm not chewing on the Greenway. I'm just saying this is what government does. Yeah. We fund our wants first, and then we come back and ask for more money for our needs.
Well, in Chattanooga, am I mistaken? I think that their river park was...
It's the same thing. It's a public-private partnership.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Well, let's move along. It looks like Fort Hill's back in the news. Sadly, Joe V. Williams slapped with a $6,631 civil penalty. What do we do?
It's private property. I think the district attorney does everything they can do on a semi-regular basis.
You keep enforcing the law, or you toughen the law up. That's one possibility.
Yeah. It's sad. I mean, it's, I don't know, something like that is just so personal for people.
Well, it is personal, but in this particular case, it's also a big part of the history and fabric of this community.
I mean, you walk through there, and the names you will see, you will immediately recognize as people that built Cleveland.
There's a reason Lee does those history tours up there every fall, where the students learn about older residents of Cleveland and tell their stories, is because they're all there in that place there. So we all have an interest in, even if you're not enforcing the law on a formal level, informally, shame everyone into enforcing it.
Well,
and go up and help,
and if
and
you're
go
gonna,
volunteer up there.
If you're going to go down that road too, let me say this: please teach your children to respect people's grave sites, not to go up there and graffiti them or push the stones over because it's fun.
Yeah, I don't understand that kind of stuff.
And by the way, the HCI, the sale of the hospital, actually funded a lot of the Greenway as well.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, well, there's no doubt there are government contributions to that. No question.
Saw an interesting article that over the last 10 years, counties paid $9.1 million into an insurance pool and had $10.7 million in claims, and 41% of that is from the jail. And so they're saying that their claims are pretty typical, but the amount that they're paying into it is none. So the insurance folks are saying we need to pay our fair share.
Well, it's risk-based.
Indeed, indeed.
I mean, the problem is we are fundamentally altering the nature of insurance, though. I mean, why would we be upset about that when we've got Franklin and some of his Democratic buddies defending Obamacare, which, for example, Blue Cross Blue Shield in the state of North Carolina just announced a week or so ago that the uninsurable pool, the people with pre-existing conditions, that they paid out around $880 million in claims, and yet they only took in about 60-something million in premiums from those people.
880 million versus 60?
Versus around 60. Around an $800 million loss on that. Now, the funny thing about that is one of the solutions that the liberal left pushes for this is single payer. Well, here's the point. When you go to single payer, that loss on those people doesn't go away. The taxpayer starts picking it up. The loss is the loss, no matter who's running the system. So, we're fundamentally altering the way insurance works.
Is that in a single year, that 880?
It was a single year. In one state.
In one state, yeah. It's a lot of money.
Well,
go ahead, Franklin. Tell us how that's sustainable.
Well, first of all, I'm not familiar with this story, so I'm not going to act like I do know something about it. I will say this, though. It's highly unusual for insurance companies in this situation to guess wrong that much over what their expected costs are going to be.
But yet they did.
Well, that's an interesting question as to why.
Well, one of the reasons why is because they got in bed on a political level, and they were told by the Obama administration and Harry Reid and the Democrats that we will force all these young people to pay these premiums, and that'll make up the difference. And two things happened. One, the young people didn't join anyway. They weren't compliant. And two, what they didn't factor in, and they do this all the time in all kinds of things, they made a static representation and said, this is what the uninsurable people have cost, and so this is what it will. Well, once you gave them free insurance effectively, they went, great, I got a splinter, I'll go to the ER. What we found was ER visits actually increased after Obamacare, not decreased. So the cost estimates were wildly underestimated.
Well, I actually saw a Republican idea that made sense this week. The first time I've seen one that was suggested that actually might address a legitimate problem. There is a bill that's being floated that changes the way the insurance functions. You would still have a catastrophic element of it, but attached to that was essentially the government making a contribution into an HSA for an individual on a yearly basis, and those folks were able to access those funds for regular doctor visits, rather than going to an emergency room.
Well,
and I thought, now this wasn't a change in funding for it. This was an allocation in the way the premiums were devoted. And then they had a third component to it. This is part that John may not like, but actually makes sense. What you had was, you had this HSA component, it's health savings account that you could utilize for that. And then you had the traditional insurance, but then there was a cap on exposure for the traditional insurance company that had a totally catastrophic pool on the backside of it that the government would essentially be, we will stop your losses at this point if you get wiped out because you have unusually unhealthy people in your population. And so you had a three-tiered approach to it, and that actually made sense to me.
Well,
I thought, well, that's something that people on both sides of the aisle could get.
I appreciate that. The only problem is, Franklin, that comes from Republican governors, and we said that before you all passed Obamacare in the first place.
John,
we've been pushing health savings accounts since the beginning of this.
Nobody
Actually,
pursued that kind of three-pronged strategy.
We have talked.
And, John, at any point in the last 5 years or so, if Republicans had come forth and said, okay, we've got Obamacare, here's some problems with it, and here's some potential fixes for it, instead of this insane, we're going to take 73 votes
with that is,
on a meaningless basis to say we killed it.
As I said, that comes from Republican governors. That idea was around when you all were discussing Obamacare, and had you not locked the Republicans out of the room, it would have been included originally.
Point. You know they participated.
They actually locked us out of the room. The door was literally locked,
You also know that there was a bipartisan gang of 8 who came up with the plan, and all of the Republican ideas got incorporated into it, except at the very end they couldn't get over the last hurdle.
Because President Obama actually purposely undercut
Obamacare were Republican ideas, and you know it's true.
Franklin, you all actually locked the door.
You know it's true.
You literally had the doorman lock the doors.
You also know there was 5,000 times more hearings and debates on this than there was on the Republican plan.
On the Republican
After
it was passed.
How many hearings were there on that one, John?
They haven't finished with it, Franklin.
How many hearings were there in the House before they passed the bill?
Session.
Before they passed the bill, how many hearings did they hold?
Everybody read the bill
0
in the House.
Not
Everybody
one.
had access to the bill.
One bill.
And they read
they introduced it 48 hours before the vote.
They actually allowed amendments,
hours.
which you all didn't.
What hypocrisy.
They allowed amendments, which you all didn't.
What hypocrisy.
But, that is a good idea, but again, it's an idea we've talked about for years, and it's an idea that has been developed by Republican governors in their states. For example, this uninsured...
Half of Obamacare was by Republican governors.
We've got the Democrats saying that we want the uninsured to die. Now, 45 states don't allow you to exclude pre-existing conditions already. 45 out of 50 states already don't allow that. So for the Democrats on a national level to be saying Republicans are trying to allow uninsured people, pre-existing condition people to die, that is pure, I don't want to quite say a lie, but it is certainly scaremongering. 45 states don't even allow it. So it can't happen in 45 states, and almost all of those have pools, just like Franklin's talking about, which they've had for years to protect those people. So scaremongering on the left is all they've got left.
Is Tennessee one of the states where it is not allowed?
I don't know. I will have to check.
Okay.
Don't know.
And I feel like Franklin is very clear today. In fact, he's so clear I can see right through him. If you're watching on whoopfm.com, you too can look directly through Franklin. You won't see any of his organs. You'll see the Backfire logo. Well, finishing up on the insurance stuff we were talking about, just to let you know, a couple of the options they're looking at is a premium increase of $121,000 right now. They pay $1.29 million, so that'll bump it up to, I guess, about $1.3. And then another option is a lower rate with a higher law enforcement deductible of up to $10,000.
Well, in that, there are a couple of egregious cases that have skewed those numbers.
Sure.
There's the shooting out on the interstate that the facts really did not support what the deputy said happened, and somebody died in it.
And he's
no longer.
Right.
Yeah, he's no longer there. And there have been a couple other instances like that. So while it's certainly a real issue, there are reasons why it's an issue.
You can't look at those things for short periods of time. You have to look at them over broad, wide ranges of time.
Correct.
Yeah, and it said that in the article that over 10 years, they've missed every year. It said they haven't had a good year in 10 years as far as putting in more money or at least breaking even than what they took out. So,
well, you get training issues. You have lots of turnover when.
Well, and keep in mind too that the demographics of Bradley County have been changing drastically over those 10 years. People like Franklin and myself who grew up in Cleveland, you ask us what the roads were like when we were kids. You could ride your bike down the road. Now we've got a rush hour. We've got gangs that have come in. There's been gang activity that we've been watching for the last 20 years. So the nature of law enforcement is shifting in Bradley County, and not always for the better.
well, did you all see the article about Adam Beard writing a letter slamming the sheriff, and Dan Rawls read the letter in the commission meeting? Anyone know what's going on there?
Well, it was an unusual thing to see a current deputy come forward that way. Made some very strong allegations. I know the sheriff has denied them. There's still this ongoing investigation, so I don't know if any of that will bear fruit or not. I saw that in the paper that a new officer had been assigned to the investigation by the TBI, that the previous one had left his job.
He went to another agency. He was transferred into a different department and then eventually left and went to another agency.
So I don't know what the time frame is or the outcome of that. Either way, it's not good publicity for the community.
Well, I mean, here would be a question I'd ask, though. And look, I'm not jumping in this on either side, but I personally don't really like letters like this made publicly, because the question would be, did you go to your supervisor? Did you go to any of the commission, as far as reporting this? Did you go to the district attorney's office? Did you do any of those things before you wrote a public letter and published it?
Well, I would suspect that if there's anything to uncover, that the Banner will uncover it and go ask some questions and do some investigative journalism, because to put something like this could be damning when there's nothing to be damned over, you know?
Well, look, you've got the same type of thing going on with this Russian connection stuff on a Washington level. I don't know what all's transpired. There are always some facts there, just like in this letter. I'm sure there are some facts there. But you've also got a current of we want to disrupt this elected official, whether it's Trump or whether it's Sheriff Watson. And at some point, if you're just sort of stirring the water on a regular basis on every innuendo, every rumor that comes forward, what you're really doing is you're damaging the people's ability to have effective governance. Now, there may be problems. There may be mistakes that are made by administrations on the sheriff's level, on the president's level, that compound it or that make it worse. But I would ask the media, I would ask pundits on the national level and on the local level, what's your intention? Are you really upset about issue A and you think issue A needs to come out, or are you just constantly on the lookout for something to disrupt the day-to-day functioning of the office?
Well, I think that's where media has a responsibility. They've reported that this letter was written. I think it shouldn't end there. I think now the Banner should go and say, let's see if this is true, and we'll do an article on it instead of just...
I want to know there are procedures in place for...
The letter itself said that the individual had been punished and disciplined in retaliation for criticisms of the sheriff. That was in the letter. So the person made that specific allegation. Whether that's true or false, I have no way of knowing.
All right, are personnel records public?
Parts of personnel records are.
Well, if you make a letter like this and make an accusation like you just said, does that then open your personnel record up to, okay, let's see what you were punished for?
I'm sorry, what I meant by that is the law lets them black out personal information like Social Security numbers and birth dates and so forth.
But the rest of it is...
The disciplinary record itself would be available through Freedom of Information Act requests.
And your problem is going to be is hopefully no one does something to an employee and actually puts in the record, hey, he made me mad and I did this, although I think that has actually happened in the past. There have been some cases where I will tell you one of the things I've never liked, and it's happened multiple sheriffs over the last 10 or 20 years. I've never liked an election to come down and people to be decimated in the reorganization. I mean, I understand that people are going to get promoted, but we had people in previous administrations that went from making $50,000 a year to making $30,000 a year.
Yeah,
that's wholly inappropriate. Now, by the same token, there's some common sense involved here, too. If you're not happy with the current sheriff, and you're not entirely sure that the challenger is going to win, you might want to kind of be quiet. You might not want to make personal attacks. If you make personal attacks, there's a good chance you're not going to fare well in the new administration.
Yeah.
So it cuts both ways.
And I'm not trying to tell the Banner to go get to work. I know a lot of these records actually aren't accessible until the investigation, if there's a TBI, especially until they're done.
Well,
the TBI's investigation isn't available. That's not the local.
But actually, that was news to me this week, that the TBI investigation report is never publicly available. Is that correct?
Well, first of all, that's through the state, not the local one, so it's a different rule that applies to it, but not while the investigation is ongoing.
Now, somebody told me that you have to impanel
Well, it can be subpoenaed in civil proceedings over it, and the TBI will generally honor those subpoenas.
But they don't routinely put these things out to the public.
No. They don't. They send them to the district attorney who's assigned to a matter to review it.
Well, for our third story involving the sheriff, he's putting stickers on the cars that say, "In God We Trust." Any opinions on this?
It's on our dollar bills. Why wouldn't it be on our sheriff's cars?
And it is not paid for by taxes. They've had people who volunteered to pay the money. So,
look,
I guess I'm a little bit of a curmudgeon on this issue, and I hope everyone will understand what I'm saying.
Humbug.
If one wants to tout one's religious views, I'm more interested in your conduct than your words. And so it doesn't make a whole lot of difference to me that it's on the the car. It also doesn't impress me that it's on the car. I'm more interested in.
So but the point is, you wouldn't demand that it be removed.
I'm not demanding it be removed. I think there's a publicity element of it that doesn't really do anything.
Well, there's a
for me.
publicity element to anything any elected official ever does, Franklin.
Okay.
Always.
Okay.
I agree with both
Now,
of you.
I will make two conflicting points on this. The first point is, it says, "In God we trust." If your God is the little orange-haired, doll that you got out of the gumball machine, then I guess it could apply to that. If it's Allah, if it's Buddha, so it doesn't express a devotion to one religion. So that would be one side of that. My side to that is that we are a Christian nation. We were founded as a Christian nation, despite what Franklin and the progressive left wants to say. And so I'm perfectly all right with it, and I understand that it's referring to the Christian God. At least for me it is.
With that, let's go to break.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
Hello. I'm the doctor.
And you're listening to WOOPLP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Checking the cash, you got a brand new choice. Our flexible loans really making noise. Flex your money, my soul. Flex your money, my soul.
A check into cash flex loan puts you in control. Visit your nearest store for details.
Shape a flex loan to fit your needs. Make your next loan a flex loan and set yourself free. Flex your money, muscle that check into cash.
Some restrictions apply. See store for details.
Hey folks, Glenn here from U.S. Money Shops, and I've got another great gun offer for you in the month of February. If you're looking for a great gun for personal protection, U.S. Money Shops has a package for you. We're offering the Taurus PT709 Slim 9mm with 2 free boxes of ammo and a free case for just $249.99. That's right, the gun, 2 boxes of ammo and a case for just $249.99. Now that's a deal. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Buy or sell or buy today. You're better away at U.S. Money Shops.
It's me, it's Fro Daddy, saying tune in to the Fro Daddy Show Monday through Friday,
3:30 to 5:30.
Standard Time. Local news, national blues, and a lot of stuff you just can't use. In Cleveland, Tennessee at 99.9 FM and around the world in a daze at WOOPFM.com. I might even play your request, so call me. And if you see WOOP on your caller ID, you better answer the phone, because I won't leave you alone. Fro Daddy.
No dealers allowed.
Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933, offering the best with over 70 styles of recliners, sofas, electronic lift chairs, full living room packages. Call Mike now at 961-7239 because Jackson Catnapper now offers sales to the public
Every Saturday. That's right, every Saturday.
from 8 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon. Or call Mike at 961-7239 or go see him
Every Saturday.
at 1911 King Edward Avenue, just across from the main plant. Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933, 961-7239.
No dealers allowed.
Dr. Christopher Chase, with associates in plastic surgery, now offers his patients the convenience of a Cleveland office at 2350 North Ocoee Street. Dr. Chase specializes for the ladies in breast augmentation, including lifts, reconstructions, and reductions. Also tummy tucks or mommy makeovers, and facial rejuvenation, including facelifts, eyelids, brows, nose, and he also offers Botox procedures. Check out Dr. Christopher Chase. He is certified by the American Board of Surgery, the American Board of Plastic Surgery. He's a member of the American Society of Plastic Surgeons and the American Society of Aesthetic Plastic Surgery. Check their website out at aprs.md. That's aprs.md. Call for your convenient appointment in Cleveland at 624-0021. 624-0021. 2350 North Ocoee. That's Dr. Christopher Chase.
Train Endurance Engineers are an elite group of extremely devoted individuals who stop at nothing to push our heating and cooling units to the brink. That way, when they pick up the pieces, they'll know exactly how to make the Train we install in your home even more reliable. Right now, their target is a Train AC unit.
Test to control. Fire up the pitching machine.
Their methods may seem unconventional,
Okay, cue the jackhammers.
but it's because of their tireless efforts that it's hard to stop a Train.
When you want an unconventionally efficient heating and air unit that keeps your home right in the comfort zone, day in and day out, nothing will do but a Train. To get the best Train service, call your local Train comfort specialist. Mechanical Systems, 336-5739. Keeping you comfortable is Mechanical Systems' only business, and they've been providing high-quality service and installation for more than 30 years. Mechanical Systems, 336-5739. That's 336-5739.
It's hard to stop a Train. Really hard.
Does your HVAC system
listening to
need spring
Backfire.
maintenance?
Steve
Call
Hickson.
Mechanical Systems before May 31st, and they'll waive the $20 service call charge.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Woo FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
We are back. You can call if you want. 614-5553.
You can call if you want. We probably won't answer, but
We
you can
will
call
answer.
if you want.
We will answer. And the guy running the board is also the one who will answer the phone. All right, 614-5553. In the meantime, I had a request from John and Franklin who said, quote, just go for it. So here we go.
Actually, Franklin.
Franklin.
said that.
All right, here we go. I'm just going to start this with one word and let you all take over. Trump.
Well, I'm not.
I would say that it's been an almost unprecedented week for a level of what I'm going to describe as pure incompetence in a White House. I've never seen a more dysfunctional place. I've never seen so many people trotted out in front of the public to make statements and have the president come along the next day in public or by tweet and saw the limb off behind them and say everything they said was false. I've never seen anything like it. And then when you add into the elements of really some dangerous kind of conduct, it's just been amazing to watch.
Here, you might find this interesting. I won't disagree that I think the White House is inexperienced. I think he brought in a lot of people that haven't worked. Now, some people think that's a good thing. Some people think that's a bad thing. But obviously, in the handling of these things, it's not been good. One problem, from what I understand, some of the things I read, is that Trump doesn't trust anybody. And he's probably got good reason not to trust a lot of people. But the problem with that is you end up holding everything in yourself. Just like Franklin said, some of his people did go out. Now, I will say this. It's very disheartening to see the press treat him very differently than the way they treated Obama, the way they even Bush wasn't anywhere near this hostile. The problem is, with that being said, it would require even more skilled hands to deal with the way these things unfold. And I think he's got less skilled hands.
I think that Donald Trump is responsible for 95% of the way the press treats him.
I disagree.
There is no precedent for a president behaving the way he's behaving.
Look, Franklin, Obama actually gave people Israeli attack plans. He actually gave foreign governments the actual military plans of attack. And there was nowhere near the level of coverage and of criticism that this
what
president
did not
got.
happen.
We're simply sharing some apparently overviews.
What did not happen in this circumstance you just talked about is that officials in the meetings felt it necessary to alert their superiors that there had been a significant and dangerous breach.
Yeah, you know why? Because Obama did it on purpose, and we didn't even know about it until after the fact. And what we found out after the fact was the Israelis had to scrap the operation because of it. So he purposefully undercut military operations that the Israelis were doing. Now, look, Franklin, as president, he had the right to do it. And that's the same point that is kind of getting lost here. Trump has the right to disclose whatever he wants to. The difference is the type of coverage that Obama got versus the type of coverage that this is getting.
The difference here is
that it's a Republican that y'all hate.
The difference here is that he gave to the very people, in many cases, supporting the people the intelligence applies to, the information that can be used against us.
Actually, he only gave an overview. Everybody has agreed. He didn't disclose any exact things.
And what they actually report is that he felt the need, like some kid on a playground, to boast about the quality of his
Franklin,
intel.
let me ask you a question. What's worse, him being unable to control his boastful nature and disclosing an overview of something, or Obama purposefully releasing detailed military plans of attack by one of our allies? You're actually going to say this is worse than purposefully releasing military plans?
It depends on the consultation.
Yeah, so it was Israel and Obama, so that's okay?
About to say. The problem here is that nobody knew Trump was going to do it. He didn't consult with the professionals in the room before he did it, and it wasn't part of any strategic decision. It was off the top of his head.
All right, so let me counter that. So what you're saying is that Obama did consult, and his people are so devious that they actually agreed with releasing military plans of attack.
If you say so, John.
Well, that's what he did.
You say so, John. But you know what? You can try all you want to try and make this about President Obama. It's not.
I'm not, Franklin.
Well,
what I'm saying, no. What I'm telling you is the media is so intent on doing the Democrats' handiwork, and the Democrats are so intent in destroying this president, which he gives them plenty of ammunition. I'm not defending that. But they are going to damage the country in the process.
With all due respect, John, there's enough Republicans condemning the president's conduct that you don't have to spend your time blaming the Democrats for a conspiracy. You have John Kasich come out and say, I hate to say it, but I told you so.
Well, John Kasich is a sore loser all the way down the line.
When you have Bob Corker say that the White House is in a downward spiral.
It is, and he said they need to upright it. But, Franklin, here's your problem.
When you have Steve King saying that the president is entering impeachment territory.
Is it illegal for the president to do what he did?
No, it's not. Which thing are you talking about this week?
Whatever he released, whatever he shared with the Russians,
no, that was not illegal.
All right. Was it illegal for Hillary Clinton to transfer all thousands of classified documents onto private servers?
Not according to the FBI.
Actually, that's one of the reasons Comey lost his job. It actually,
you say so.
Incompetence is actually in the statute. Neglect and carelessness is actually, my point, Franklin, is none of your big Democrats got all upset about thousands of classified documents that Hillary Clinton gave away. And by the way, Franklin, let me make sure I understand.
Thousands of classified documents did not get given away.
Thousands were put on her unsecured server. We have no idea
That's not giving it away.
We have no idea
and
where
you got to prove that happened.
All right, let's prove one thing that we do know.
Well, let's back up to
your people.
Let's back up to your words, not anybody else's. How many times did you say if someone were reckless with classified information, they shouldn't get it? Just reckless, not whether it was a crime or not. How many times did you say that?
Let me give you
one.
Well,
then what do you think about
I'm
this
president? I'm going to give you the big distinction here, Franklin.
It's not a distinction.
It goes back to something Richard Nixon said. If the president does it, it's not illegal.
I didn't say illegal. I didn't say illegal. I never said that.
I don't
you
know
said
what
if someone's reckless with it, they shouldn't have it.
I don't know.
Was he reckless with
I don't know. That's the point. I'm not read in on any of this, and neither are you, and neither is anyone else. Here's your problem, though, Franklin. You've got a Democratic Party that wanted Comey fired and then went ballistic when he was fired.
I've not said anything to defend James Comey in this room.
You've got two previous presidents who George Bush saw the soul of Vladimir Putin and tried to reach out to him. Obama told him he'd have more flexibility and reached out to him and shared things. This president's made a calculation. Look at it. I disagreed with all of them. I don't like the Russians on any level. I didn't like it when Bush did it. I didn't like it when Obama did it. And I didn't like it when Trump has now done it. The difference is the press gave Bush somewhat of a pass on it. They certainly gave Obama a pass on it, and they're going to crucify Trump over it.
Well, first of all, they didn't give those people passes over it, and neither of them were nearly as reckless as what you're talking about.
You have no idea what they shared or didn't share. Obama shared...
Oh, we have a pretty good idea what was shared here.
Obama shared actual military plans. From what I understand, all Trump did was talk about some things they knew. He didn't share any actual details. Now, the concern is that from the overview that he gave, they will be able to figure out where it came from.
Yes, John, if you tell that you're aware of a specific threat, and the people you're telling it to are the people who are financially supporting the people making the threat, it's a pretty good bet they can figure that out.
You're right, but it's not as easy as if you actually hand over military plans. Military attack plans.
There's a reason, John, that the establishment in the intelligence agencies are very upset about this. And it's not got nothing to do with whether Trump's a Republican or who's a Democrat. It was horribly bad judgment, period. And it wasn't talked to about them about it, and they didn't have a chance to warn the people that it was coming or do any of the things that would be necessary to protect their assets.
Do you actually think that the Obama people warned the Israelis, by the way, we're going to hand over your actual military plans?
I think that the intelligence establishment was aware that the president was going to have the conversation. Yes.
Look, Franklin, here's the problem. I'm not defending this. I don't really.
You are.
No, I'm not. I am telling you that the press has taken an issue which I may not agree with completely, although I will admit that I don't understand it because I'm not read in on it, just like you're not read in on it, just like Thomas Friedman's not read in it, or the New York Times. And I can tell you that the Washington Post has got multiple things wrong over the last week on a lot of these stories, has been proven wrong. The Comey firing, they said he requested extra money. The DOJ came out and said, A, we don't request money like that, and B, he didn't do it. All these things have been proven wrong on the media's part. So my point simply here is they are ginning this up as high as they can gin it. And it is damaging the fabric of the country.
Oh, I think that it's definitely damaging the fabric of the country. But it's also pretty clear whose fault that is.
Well, it's just like Hillary Clinton's fault for moving the server. But you all have excused her loss for months now.
Was it the media's fault that Donald Trump sent the vice president and the national security advisor and the press secretary out to say one set of facts and then goes on TV the next day and says something completely opposite the truth?
And I agree with you on the front end of that. All I'm telling you is
that's not the media's fault.
The press is giving this a much higher classification than they've done in previous offices. Now, and I said at the start, he gives them plenty of ammunition. But the press has an agenda here. They are not a neutral observer, and they are trying to make this as damaging as possible. Now, I agree. I don't like some of what I've seen. But I'm telling you that Obama was covered up for by the press because they loved him, and Trump is getting every bullet they can shoot at him.
You didn't watch the press coverage I did then. If you think the press loved Obama.
Well, the problem with that is your perspective comes from a snowflake.
Yeah. That's the Bill O'Reilly word of the week. Which is just what we need.
You might want to
more
read,
freaking hypocrites telling everybody else how to live.
You might want to read some. Bill O'Reilly's been gone for a couple of weeks now.
Yeah, it's his book where he uses the term snowflake in it.
Well, you know what? Here's what's interesting. I don't read Bill O'Reilly. I haven't read, and probably don't plan on reading Bill O'Reilly's book. Glad to know what you're reading.
Yeah, it's just that's the word of the week in the conservative circles.
Well, because you all have a bunch of snowflakes all over the country that can't tolerate any divergence from the liberal ideology.
Here's what we can't tolerate. We can't tolerate conservatives spending 40 years telling us what their ideology is, and then throwing it in the river overnight just because a Republican happens to be in the office. The fact is, there's nothing Donald Trump's done in the last 120 days that you would have supported if any Democrat did it. And in fact, everything that Donald Trump's done for the last 90 days, you'd be screaming for the impeachment of the Democratic president. And nobody, not one listener on this entire vast whoop network would ever think that you would have said otherwise about President Obama.
First off,
not
Franklin,
one.
Here's this, you've actually illuminated the difference between liberals and conservatives here. In 8 years, I never called for Obama to be impeached.
I didn't say you
no,
did.
you just
But
said
you know
you
what?
just
That's
said that I
because
would.
he
No,
never did
listen.
anything as
You
crazy
just said
as
that I would,
Oh,
and
yes,
that's
you
your
would
point.
have.
You
Yes,
people
you
have
would
been
have.
screaming impeachment
Yes,
from the
you
start
would have.
because that's how you all
Yes,
think.
you
If
would
someone
have.
doesn't agree with you, they're
Yes,
evil
but
and they should be
President-
destroyed.
If the
That's how
and
you
there's
view
been
things.
dozens of Republican conservative
Tell me when I
commentators
called for Obama's impeachment.
because he didn't do
How many?
anything
No,
like
you're
that.
wrong, Franklin. I disagreed with everything he did.
I didn't
found
say you
things he
disagreed
did.
with him.
I found things
I
he did
said
were
if he
dangerous
did
for this country.
One of the
and not
things
once,
that Donald Trump did this week,
Franklin,
you've been howling for his
not
head.
once did I call for his impeachment.
Because he didn't do these
No,
things.
because I understand
He
the
didn't
Constitution
do it.
and I understand impeachment, unlike you and your liberal buddies.
Unlike all the conservative commentators who've made this very point
Well,
this
I'm
week.
glad you're in bed with Maxine Waters. Please feel
I
free to
didn't call
read.
for his impeachment.
Please feel
I'm
free to
pointing out
read
the
all of her
hypocrisy
statements
on
and
your
make
side.
sure you're in bed with her.
When Jonah Goldberg's talking about it, when Eric Erickson's talking about it, when Anna Navarro's talking about it, when Ann Coulter's talking about it, don't tell me it's the Democrats. You need to get your own house in order.
Frankly, that's the point. We don't have a house to get
Oh,
in
you
order.
do. You
no,
definitely
we
do.
have people with independent thought. We always have. And we tolerate independent thought, unlike the left. That's why we don't shout speakers down. That's why Governor Jerry Brown, after raising the gas tax in California to the highest in the country, has now called the taxpayers who are complaining about it freeloaders. He actually called taxpayers upset about the largest gas tax in the country. He called them freeloaders.
Nice
That's
diversion
democratic
and
thought
subterfuge,
process.
John.
No, I'm
Yes,
telling
it
you
is.
how you all think.
You have
if you don't
elected
agree
the
with
most
you all, you
incompetent
think that you're
person who's
evil.
ever inhabited the office.
No, that's
and
not true.
maybe the most
Oh,
corrupt.
I think Obama was probably the most
The
incompetent.
most incompetent,
This guy has at least built
amateurish,
something. I'll tell you
amateurish.
he's amateurish, but one of the reasons he's amateurish, Franklin, is because the public doesn't trust anybody in D.C., Democrat or Republican.
All
and that's
I
one of the
know
ways
is-
you got Trump.
All I know is when Obama was there, his approval ratings never got to 36%.
Well, it's easy when you're giving
We
stuff
never
away.
had
It's easy when
80%
you're
of the
giving
country
stuff
saying
away.
there needs to be an independent
Democrats
investigation.
are always popular because they give stuff away.
Yes, that's right. We're all for sale.
You are.
Only Republicans stand up for these high-minded ideals.
You mean like Janet Napolitano, who's now charging the University of California $200,000 a year just for her rent on her home, even though she's paid hundreds of thousands of dollars as chancellor? That woman? The one that won't control UC Berkeley riots? The one that won't allow free speech on campuses in her control? That kind of Democrat?
Don't know about that one.
Of course not. You don't want to know about that one.
What I know is about the guy who's in office right now.
She's in office right now. Why don't you know about her?
Well, let the California government handle California. I don't know
You've
why
got a
you
California
get so
governor
wired up about
calling people freeloaders because they want their taxpayer dollars spent
it. They've
wisely.
got a wonderful system there. You know what it is? It's called an election.
They're asking for secession right now.
It's
You're
an
good
election.
liberal. You're good. No, actually, they don't even have that, Franklin, because they went to this kind of jungle primary where you didn't even have a Republican on the ballot. They're complete
Why weren't there any Republicans on the
because the
ballot?
Democrats changed the system.
Because the Republicans screwed up their budget so
because they
bad
changed the
when
system,
they were in
Franklin.
control of
They
it.
changed the system to where the people didn't even have a choice. Totalitarian is what it's
Okay.
called.
All right, well, gentlemen, I think I'm going to change the subject for a moment. That was a one-word question.
And a very insightful one, too.
Very insightful. I just wanted to clarify earlier, well, for all of our Russian listeners, earlier John said something along the lines of he doesn't like Russians on any level, and he doesn't mean he doesn't like you as a people. He doesn't like some of the political things that you do. Is that correct?
I don't like the government.
He doesn't like the government. He loves Russians.
In the 80s, when everybody thought Reagan was going to start World War III, and Sting writes the song that I'm sure the Russians love their children too. Guess what? They do love their children. All of the people in Russia love their children. But the people in Russia who love their children aren't the ones with their fingers on the button to launch nuclear Armageddon. It's the controlling, dictatorial, horrible rulers in the government.
Agreed. Now, another question. You guys were talking about impeachment a lot and calling for impeachment. Could you all...
Nobody called for impeachment.
No, okay.
I didn't say that.
Something I think might be beneficial because a lot of people get worked up and want impeachment for this president, that president.
Maxine Waters has been calling for it for months.
Could you remind everyone kind of the grounds for impeachment? Because I think that gets lost.
Well, it's a little unclear. The Constitution says high crimes and misdemeanors. High crimes isn't really defined in the law.
I mean, according to the Democrats, testifying, committing perjury in a federal court like Bill Clinton didn't qualify. So if actually violating really the basis of our entire judicial system doesn't qualify, I don't know what would.
Well, did you all hear any of Trump's commencement speech to the Liberty University grads?
Parts of it.
Any thoughts on it? Typical graduation speech?
Yeah.
Well, Doughball liked it, and he asked me to mention it. He actually told me to cut some bits, but sorry, Doughball. Well, did you all hear about Corker and Fleischman with their stock trades? What's going on there? It's an interesting situation. Basically, for those who aren't aware, it's almost like insider trading where they've got groups coming to them and they're working on legislation and they know what's going to happen in legislation according to kind of the accusations, and so they sell stocks accordingly.
Look, here's one of the problems with that, and the Trump administration has faced the same problem here. We are moving into an area where apparently being successful and being a business person is an actual detriment. So apparently what we want is lifetime government officials running our life. So anyone who has private experience, anyone who's been successful in the private world, apparently is suspect now.
I don't even know what that has to do with this.
It has to do with the fact that they are private individuals who had successful business careers before they...
This isn't even complicated. There ought to be a flat law that applies to every Democrat and every Republican. While you're a congressman, you can't engage in stock trades, period.
Look, the problem is, Bob Corker doesn't engage in stock trades.
Yes, he did.
He
it's in the paper this morning,
He doesn't control it, Franklin.
No, he did. It says he did.
Yeah.
He admits that he did.
Here's
Fleischman says his was in a blind trust. There's a difference. Corker says specifically he did.
Look,
now, he says in his defense that he took a loss on it. Okay? On the other hand, he'd also been on CNBC 6 or 8 months ago talking about people ought to be shorting stocks right now. I don't know if he did something wrong or not. I am only going to tell you, across the board, every single congressman, because they're voting on legislation that affects those things, ought to be banned from engaging in stock trades while they're in office.
I disagree completely. What that is saying you can't be a successful businessman and serve the country. We require you to give up your life in order to serve the country. And guess what you do when you do that, Franklin? You open the door for graft and collusion, because then they have no income. And the only income they're going to make, they don't know whether they're going to get reelected in 2 years or 4 years or 6 years. So what do? It opens the door for them to be susceptible to graft and bribery and collusion. I would much rather have a successful businessman continue to run his business while he serves in government.
Somebody inside information as a member of the government should not be trading in stocks.
Franklin,
I'm sorry. That's ethics 101.
If you trade in stocks and it turns out to be a completely biased insider trade, then I think it'll come out. The next time you run, the opponent will use it against you, and the people can make a decision.
It's not insider trading to know that you're going to be voting on legislation and to have some idea of how that legislation, whether it's going to pass or fail. That doesn't meet the definition of insider trading under the law. That's not the same thing. It's just wrong, period.
I disagree.
You shouldn't be profiting from your public service.
I disagree.
That's exactly a way people can stay up there, is because they can make money on the side with this kind of information. That's not how it ought to be. I'm not saying the two people locally here did that or did not do it. The appearance of impropriety is too great. It ought to be against the law, and that ought to apply to Democrats and Republicans, period.
Well, Franklin, do you have that same feeling for, let's say, universities and things that get grant money and then turn around and do research to support the premise of the grant in the first place that the government wanted? Say, example, Al Gore and all the money that he's made through the government on his global warming crap. I mean, I would much rather someone be an open businessman who makes his own money in his own business than to have them basically in a position where the only way they can make money is to sell themselves as government employees.
I don't even know what you're talking about, John.
Of course not.
Well, I don't know who out there is aware of this, but one trick that we in the media like to use to force you to come back and listen or watch it again is to end on a happy note. And so I think
John's
we can do that.
Sing?
John, yes, he is. Zippity-doo-dah. Trump says he's going to take care of violent crimes against police. This is a good thing?
Absolutely, unless you're, a liberal protester that hates the police.
He's just asking, Franklin, if you're not aware of this, you had a puzzled look. He's asking the Justice Department to develop strategies to prevent and prosecute violent crimes against law enforcement, which you would think were already in place, but I guess he wants to get a little tougher on it. That's a good thing, right?
Well, I can only say this. Well, that's a noble goal, I guess.
I guess.
Well, I only say that because if you look at the statistics, people who commit violent crimes against police officers are typically given far longer sentences than people who commit a violent crime against non-police officers. So I don't really know what it means other than it's a good soundbite.
Yeah. Well, with that,
by the way, we now know that the DNCA that was shot in the back and nothing robbed from him was the WikiLeaks.
We actually know that story's been retracted now.
Okay, well, we still want you to come back next week. So we all love puppies, and I hope that you have a happy birthday, whoever out there has a birthday.
You know for sure that John loves puppies? I've never heard him talk about it in here.
John, can you confirm that you love puppies? Or don't have a disdain for them? They're kind of annoying how they pee and poop everywhere, but they're cute at least.
Well, I've enjoyed them at several Chinese restaurants.
I have a feeling they're just moving targets.
Puppy is tender. It's a lot. It's not tough yet.
See?
Love me tender. All right, you've been listening to Backfire. Lord willing, Doughball will be back next week. See you then.
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson, John